Former Finance Minister and former External Affairs Minister Yashwant Sinha is back with his fascinating autobiography titled as The Relentless. The Nirmala Sitharaman's choice as the Finance Minister is appropriate, keeping in mind the multiple set of challenges the economy is facing right now?
I wouldn't like to seriously comment on that. We were all professionals on that job. And today's management of the economy has become so complex. You are spot on. Now, this government has been lucky. Electorate have shown time and again that everyone comes with an expiry date. The BJP has become part of the Congress system today. I am saying it with a great deal of regret. Quite some time ago, I stopped believing in the statistics which are dished out by this government because nothing anymore is credible. That the ruling party was far, far ahead in terms of messaging.
Well, our special guest today, to use a cliche, who has worn many hats in his life. The man who is no stranger to headlines, and many of them ended up being controversial, and many of them tore apart the government on its economic policies. Former Finance Minister and former External Affairs Minister Yashwant Sinha launched his book India Unmade in last December, in which he said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi broke the economy. Now, Mr. Yashwant Sinha is back with his fascinating autobiography titled as The Relentless. That is an appropriate title to match his abilities also. Mr. Sinha, first of all, I would like to congratulate you for coming out with such a fascinating autobiography, Relentless.
Thank you.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Moving on to my first question, that you have written a lot of books in the past, like on the economic subject and criticizing the government policies. So my first question is very generic, like what prompted you to come up with such a fascinating autobiography?
You know, I have mentioned in this book that one day the Bloomsbury people who have published this autobiography, they came to see me with this request that I should write my biography, and I was reluctant. You know, I was not very keen at that stage, and I'm talking of something like 3 years ago. But as we were sipping our respective cups of tea, we started discussing, or I started telling them about some of the events of my life. And after a few minutes, they said, "But you have already written the book. All that you have to do is to just say what you are telling us in writing." So that's how the idea of the book was born, and that's how I started to write the book. And as I said, it has taken a few years, but I am happy with the final product.
So moving on to the next question, that moving on to the December 2018, when you launched your last book, India Unmade, in which you said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has broke the economy. And moving on to 23rd May 2019, when Modi government came with a huge mandate once again and with a thumping majority. So can we draw out this conclusion from the fact that the unprecedented economic slowdown, the unprecedented unemployment, the unprecedented falling exports have nothing to do with electoral results, or that has nothing to do with the common masses as well?
You are spot on. All these issues that you have talked about, and add to that fiscal deficit and this, that and the other, NPAs, these are not issues for the common people. The only economic issue which matters in elections, which will have an impact on electoral results, especially if the party which is in governance, is price rise. Now, this government has been lucky that during the last 5 years, because of the international crude oil prices, even in this country as in the rest of the world, the price rise has been moderate. So that did not become an issue. And because that did not become an issue, therefore, no other economic issue could become an issue during the elections. And after having made that point, I'd also like to say that, you know, there was agricultural distress, a lot of distress in the agricultural sector. But sometimes people think it is my personal misfortune. It is perhaps not the misfortune of the whole class to which I belong. And here, the point which I'd like to make is, it's very important on how you do your messaging. For political parties, messaging is the most important thing, especially during the elections. And I have no hesitation in admitting that the ruling party was far, far ahead in terms of messaging than the opposition. I have also said somewhere that there is a saying that people get the government they deserve, they also get the opposition they deserve. So in our case, we have got the opposition that we deserved.
So you have been a finance minister and you have presented 5 regular budgets and 2 interim budgets. So recently, Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman presented her maiden budget on 5th of July. Do you think that that budget has lived up to the expectation of the people, the kind of promises that Narendra Modi made while being on electoral trail?
You have heard the phrase, adding fuel to fire. If there is a fire going on, you extinguish the fire by pouring water on it, not fuel. This budget has added fuel to fire. And I'd also like to tell you that quite some time ago, I stopped believing in the statistics which are dished out by this government, because nothing anymore is credible. So when they come out with whatever figures they come out with, I take it with a huge pinch of salt. Look at what happened to the back series of the GDP data. Look at what happened to the unemployment data. Look at what's happened to the fiscal deficit data. You are aware of the fact that CNAG has come out with a report where they say that in 2017-18, they concealed an amount of 4 lakh crore, 4 lakh crore, which should have been shown as fiscal deficit, but which became off budget. And the government public sector undertakings were told to go to the market and borrow that amount. So how do we believe this? Even as far as this budget is concerned, a member of the Prime Minister's Economic Advisory Council, Ratin Roy, or Ratin Das, I think.
Ratin Roy.
Yeah, he's come out with a statement that there is a hole of 1,70,000 crore. And it's very simple to explain for people to understand. When you are presenting the budget of interim budget on February 1, you had to provide the figures of revised estimates. Now you did it on the basis of whatever actual figures were available, right? So the revised estimates mentioned some figures of revenue, receipts, total receipts of the government and expenditure of the government. When you present the budget on July 5, you have the advantage of the Controller and Auditor General, not the Controller, I'm sorry, the Controller General of Accounts giving you the actual figures. So suppose the actual figures were available for May 2019 when the budget was being prepared, is it justified for the Finance Minister to go back to the revised estimates of 1st February and proceed on that basis? If she had taken the actual figures of receipts and expenditure, she would not have burdened this budget with a hole, as I said, of 1,70,000 crore rupees. Now that is the shortfall in receipts. It will have an impact on expenditure. Expenditure is bound to contract by that or even more. So what's the point in this budget? There is something called the arithmetic of the budget. If the arithmetic is absolutely wrong, then how do we believe anything about this budget?
And sir, this next question is that do you think that Nirmala Sitharaman's choice as the finance minister is appropriate, keeping in mind the multiple set of challenges the economy is facing right now?
I wouldn't like to seriously comment on that because it will be a personal remark and I don't want to make any personal comments. But I like to tell you this, I was finance minister briefly in 1991. I was succeeded by Manmohan Singh, who was succeeded by Chidambaram. Then there was a brief spell, and I succeeded Chidambaram in 1998. Then, as I said, there was in 2004, Chidambaram came back, and then there was a brief spell of 2 years when Pranab Mukherjee was, or I had a 2-year period when NDA had a 2-year period when Yashwant Sinha was. Now look at the background of all these people. I can claim without being fear of contradiction that we were all professionals on that job. And today's management of the economy has become so complex. It's such a huge complex task that you need professionals and a lot of professional advice to be able to do justice to that job. I leave it at that.
So, like every government has their plus points and the negative points, and like the way BJP government and the Congress had certain achievements. If we would ask Narendra Modi, he will come up with this comment that demonetization and implementation of GST are among the top reforms that the government introduced and is a kind of a shock therapy to revive the economy. Are you pretty convinced with this fact?
No. As far as demonetization is concerned, according to all the objectives which were put forth by the government for doing what they did, it was a complete and absolute failure. As far as shock therapy is concerned, it was shock therapy in the reverse, because you give electric shock to a patient to revive him. In this case, it killed the economy. GST is a reform, there is no doubt about it. But again, I'll go back to the Controller Auditor General, who has come out with a report after 2 years of GST, in which he said he has confirmed what we have been saying all along, that it was a poorly thought out scheme. We should not have faced the kind of and the multiple problems that we faced on the GST front in its implementation during the last 2-3 years. So there was no reason why the government should have done what they have done. And I have said it earlier that it appears as if the finance minister did not apply his mind. GST was one tax reform where the finance minister had to directly apply his mind. I carried out a lot of reform on the indirect tax side and laid the foundation for GST. But I used to apply my own mind. That is unavoidable when you are dealing with a serious issue like the goods and services tax. That was missing, and therefore there was a lot of pain. And I like to assert in this interview with you that both demonetization and the poorly designed GST played havoc with the economy, the results of which we are witnessing today.